Welcome back. And I also wanted to mark the anniversary of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s birth, which is, of course, today. And I wanted to start with a passage from his book, Strength to Love. It's appropriate to the Dharma reflection for today. And Dr. King writes, one of the great tragedies of life is that men or people, seldom bridge the gulf between practice and profession, between doing and saying. A persistent schizophrenia leaves so many of us tragically divided against ourselves. On the one hand, we proudly profess certain sublime and noble principles, but on the other hand, we sadly practice the very antithesis of these principles. How often are our lives characterized by a high blood pressure of creeds and an anemia of deeds? And then, as a Baptist minister, he reflects on some of his faith and then goes on to say, we proclaim our devotion to democracy, but we sadly practice the very opposite of the democratic creed. We talk passionately about peace, and at the same time, we assiduously prepare for war. We make our fervent pleas for the high road of justice, and then we tread unflinchingly the low road of injustice. This strange dichotomy, this agonizing gulf between the ought and the is, represents the tragic theme of man's earthly pilgrimage. So Dr. King in Strength to Love, that agonizing gulf between the ought and the is. So last week, Fresh Lev White gave a beautiful talk on intention and vision and how we can practice with vision on a personal level and also on a world level. And that question, what do I really want? Not my conditioning or what consumer culture tells me I should want, but what are the deepest longings of my deepest heart? How do I want to grow and change to give that vision life? Sometimes we deal with that place of, oh, it's not happening quickly enough, or I just will never change, I just don't change. Or there's something wrong with me that I have all this work to do in the first place. That agonizing gulf between the ought and the is. And so in this process of change and growth, self-compassion and self-forgiveness is an essential tool. It's as important as our persistence, our discipline in choosing the direction of freedom, of liberation again and again and again. So each moment can be sacred and fresh if we engage from right where we are with that quality of beginner's mind. So sometimes I like to play a mental game of, so this is your life, now what? So I imagine that I wasn't born 60 years ago, but that I was born today into this adult body, and these particular life circumstances, privileges, pains, joys, traumas, sorrows, all of it. Like I just slipped in 10 minutes before the morning alarm goes off, and then open my eyes and seeing what's here. What am I dealing with? What is it like to be an Ian? What are my options? How might I bridge that gulf between ought and what is? And just as I invited us to, in the meditation, to notice any obvious areas of tension, noticing that in myself. Not things that I necessarily need to fight and struggle with, but is there anything in my way of being or relating that I can now just let go of, that I'm ready to release because I know better now, wisdom knows better now. Just the same as when you realize your shoulders are up here and oh, they don't need to be. I can just let that go. And then where are the beautiful places in my life experience? What's beautiful? Where am I expressing the paramis, these beautiful qualities that the Buddha taught? Generosity, virtue or ethics, and renunciation, wisdom, energy, patience, truthfulness, integrity again, resolve, equanimity, loving kindness. What might I like to let go of? And what do I celebrate and appreciate in myself? That's a step that we sometimes need to invite in. It's easy to see the things that we don't love about ourselves or are difficult to hold. What about what is beautiful? What about the ways that we're showing up that can be celebrated and strengthened through attention? So it's said that the essence of style is good editing, knowing what's needed and knowing what can be set aside. Nature being the best editor, everything in its season, everything in its time. And we can follow that. When it's time to let go, nature lets go, she lets go. We can do this too, being creatures of nature. And there are times when we think that we need to push toward change, to do this or to do that, to add. But very often it's a letting go that's more appropriate. So I just mentioned renunciation as one of the beautiful qualities, one of the paramis, and it means letting go of or being free of. And it really is at the core of the teachings. Ajahn Amaro, who's a Buddhist monk, says that letting go is the engine of liberation. Letting go is the engine of liberation. So in this practice, we're not seeking to gain peace and joy and enlightenment. Instead, we're seeking to let go of, to put at rest, to allow to fall away whatever obscures our radiant nature, our innate wisdom, our worthiness, the beautiful qualities of our heart. And Michelangelo said that I saw the angel in the stone and I carved to set him free. I saw the angel in the stone and I carved to set him free. What's extraneous in my life? What's not needed? What is it possible to carve away? That's the inquiry. Letting go is the engine of liberation. So how does that happen? How does letting go function in that way? So cultural conditioning that we swim in supports the opposite of letting go. It's all about gaining and accumulating and owning and taking, appropriating, more for me first of all, and then more for the people that I deem worthy, and everyone else, well, it's up to them. It's their problem. So there's this zero-sum game of separation and violence, intentional or unintentional, to the people who are marginalized, who are targeted, who are colonized. And many of us have been conditioned to think that this is the normal order of things, habituated, trained to think that it's all about getting. Not those of us here. We wouldn't probably be here if we really believed that. But it's interesting to notice. I've been really watching greed a lot in my own mind and how it shows up. And I think the Buddha was so right that for greed, aversion, and delusion are the three poisons, and for me, greed is probably the strongest one. It's always wanting something. Just even watching my mind looking at emails in the morning. So one email is from a retreat center telling me about a meditation and practice retreat focusing on climate change and environmental justice. And I start reflecting on that and I start getting interested. That sounds like really good. That's in line with my values and what I'm interested in. And then, one click later, I'm seriously considering and making a case in my mind for getting a new piece of technology that I don't even really need because the old one still functions. So I noticed, I noticed these things this week, but how awake am I to the habit energy of wanting and needing that's programmed into me, that I don't even notice the water that I'm swimming in. So what is intrinsically better about having the most stuff? Why is that better than just enough? What's wrong with neutral? Why? I mean, I'm asking myself this question because I want to keep contemplating it. Why is it always something needs to be added? What about something can be let go of? What about it's okay just as it is and I don't need to be entertained in this moment? So the Dharma teaches us that letting go isn't just a nice quality, but that letting go leads directly to freedom. And the Buddha said, whatever isn't yours, meaning almost everything, let go of it. Your letting go of it will be for your long-term welfare and happiness. Whatever isn't yours, let go of it. Your letting go of it will be for your long-term welfare and happiness. Letting go is the engine of liberation. And just as we show up again and again in our practice, that constant return, that inclining again and again, we let go again and again until our burden is no burden. We recondition. It may take me many, many times to realize I can let go of this. I may have to let go of things more than once. So what is this process of letting go? And sometimes it can be relatively clear, we're ready. We pay attention to our discomfort and we see clearly the cause of that discomfort. And it's like, oh, yeah, I don't need this right now. And we're ready to lay it down. Don't hate it. Don't deny that it's there. I just loosen my attachment, my grasp. It's a sort of a natural movement. And the lack of aversion or hating it is so important, not blaming or shaming that it's there, but just knowing that the tension, the tangle, the craving and aversion is nature. It's just what's happening. And the practice gives me that opportunity to wake up to what's here. And then in that waking up, there is the opportunity to change course. Simply letting go. In the letting go, there is also an offering. So I'm letting this go. May this energy be recycled into something beneficial. It's almost like we're giving that back to nature, back to the unfolding. I'm letting this go. May this energy be recycled. Ajahn Amaro again said, if we don't let go, we don't make space to receive what's coming our way. So if letting go is the engine of liberation, then what's the engine of letting go? So to me, it's the path itself, the Buddha's Eightfold Path. First of all, mindfulness, what's sometimes called the universal solvent of mindfulness. Paying attention with care, without judgment, allows clarity and allows us to see and answer that question because we're paying attention to what is this made of? How is it experienced in the mind and the body and heart? And then wisdom, wise view, wise intending, knowing the drawbacks of clinging to what is ultimately unclingable, remembering that what we are clinging to isn't self, is not us, is not ours. It's just nature playing itself out. The Buddha invited us to reflect again and again and again. This is not me. This is not mine. This is not myself. Suffering, dukkha, is not self. Changing phenomenon are not self. And then can I remember that intention of letting go, of softening and releasing? And the integrity part of the path, or wise speech, wise action, wise livelihood, these practices of non-harming self and others, and not adding to the fuel, not adding fuel to the fire of greed and aversion through our actions, not wishing to, not engaging in behavior that tends to entangle me more in clinging and aversion. So see it, know it, do no harm, let it be, and let it fall away as it's ready, as we're ready. And so when we let go through this kind of practice, to me, it's really, there's not a force to it. It's a very gentle effort. It's not like throwing something away, like I can't stand this, crushing it or pushing it away. It's not a grand gesture. It's just a simple, just a gentle release, letting it fall, letting it drop, no longer holding on. So sometimes it's easy to let go. Yep, don't need it, no problem. At other times it's more of a gradual process and unwinding. We may need to put whatever it is down again and again and again. Maybe it's a habit that we know doesn't serve us. Maybe it's an attitude toward ourselves or others that really just needs to untangle slowly. We need to see again and again and again, oh, there's that voice of self-criticism that, yes, it's there. There's a reason that it's there. It keeps coming, it keeps coming. And can I keep letting go, keep seeing and letting go, and be patient with myself in that process, knowing that, yes, I may need to let go many times. We may have these deep patterns, mental grooves that are very worn. Sometimes they're called sankharas in the teachings. And so it may take lots of applications of that universal solvent of mindfulness, of the practice. A good analogy for this is imagining a statue that was made of clay a long, long time ago. And that might be the hurt or the self-defense or the vulnerability that we needed a way to protect. And then over the years, you can imagine layer after layer of vines growing up around this clay statue, wrapping around it, obscuring what's actually at the core, and yet growing larger and larger. That's like our conditioning that's helped us deal with what's inside that's too tender or not clearly seen. And maybe those vines are thorny and we feel them every time we brush up against them, or someone else feels them as they try and get close to us. And so this practice, this repeated practice of mindfulness and clear comprehension, enables us to penetrate the vines, not reacting, just looking closely, examining, seeing, loosening, relaxing. And the more that we penetrate and untangle the thicket, the more we may find that the freedom just lies in the untangling itself, that patient application again and again of mindfulness and wisdom and loosening. And we may even find that the statue, the clay statue inside, may have turned to dust long ago. So that's how it can be with our conditioning. We may not know exactly what it is that has kept us separate or afraid or mistrustful or whatever it might be. But by looking at that condition with a mind that isn't either holding on tight or pushing it away violently, we can allow the space that's needed for that conditioning to untangle and unwind. And maybe we discover that what seems so solid isn't so solid, and that there is nothing there to be clung to. Certainly not me or mine or myself. So I wanted to offer a paragraph from Pema Chodron's book, Free Yourself from the Story of You. Actually, that's an article. Free yourself from the story of you. When you practice staying present, one thing you'll quickly discover is how persistent the storyline is. Traditionally, in the Buddhist texts, our tendencies with their habitual storylines are described as seeds in the unconscious. When the right causes and conditions come together, these pre-existing propensities pop up like flowers in the springtime. It's helpful to contemplate that it's these propensities and not what triggers them that are the real cause of our suffering. The propensity to feel sorry for ourselves, the propensity to be jealous, the propensity to get angry, our habitual, all too familiar emotional responses are like seeds that we just keep watering and nurturing. But every time we pause and stay present with the underlying energy, we stop reinforcing these propensities and begin to open ourselves to refreshingly new possibilities. So when we're ready to let go, what are we letting go into? It takes courage. Some of the patterns that we let go of are old friends, or at least very familiar roommates, and they may have even served us well at one time, protecting us. So it can take courage to let go. So mindfulness and our own intuitive wisdom may show us where we have opportunities to let go, and places that are comfortable, familiar, but that keep us stuck. And so we get to experiment. When I wake up in the middle of the night and my mind is racing, do I reach for a book or the iPad to look at funny videos on TikTok to sort of numb out and change my mind? I can, yet it's not in line with my intentions of self-care or toward more awareness and mindfulness and presence with my experience. And so I get to see for myself what happens when I make that slight pivot and choose, okay, this is here right now. Can I let this be here? Can I lie back down again, acknowledge the swirl of mental activity without getting hooked by it, and then choose to do a practice, maybe do a body scan instead, or simply count my breaths, or offer metta, letting go of that impulse towards stimulation and distraction in the face of discomfort. So tuning into neutral, letting what's here be here, not pushing it away, not grabbing onto another vine of distraction, but letting this be here and letting myself be okay with what's here. It doesn't mean I have to delve into it, but I can bring in a practice that will support me and enable me to not run away. And there's nothing wrong with neutral. I love that, that saying, there's nothing wrong with neutral. Um, we only think there is. And then I get to see, so what was the result of that choice? And how do I feel the next night when I choose to pick up the iPad instead and look at TikTok videos or scroll through something? Nothing right or wrong, just what happens, what works, which behaviors are skillful, and which am I ready to let go of? What I'm letting go into is freedom. I am letting go into a life of learning and unfolding. Narayan Liebenson, who led the first retreat that I sat, writes, meeting life from a meditative perspective rather than the prevailing cultural view of success and failure lets us meet the world as a field of learning. So, meeting life from a meditative perspective rather than the prevailing cultural view of success and failure lets us meet the world as a field of learning. What works? What leads to less suffering for me and those around me? Whatever the experience, whether it's internal or external with people close to you or as part of communities, we have this opportunity to remember this engine of liberation, loosening our hold, not throwing away, not suppressing, but just seeing with mindfulness what's here. And when we see clearly, if it doesn't serve those intentions and wholeness, gently letting it down, gently putting it down. And am I remembering my commitment to letting go, to kindness, to compassion? Am I in alignment with the path? I may not always be, and I often get lost. And that's when I have the Buddha, this example of a life lived with great mindfulness and care and attention and diligence and love. And I have the Dharma, the teachings, the way that the Buddha practiced and the way of the universe that he taught. And then I have the sangha, too, the community of practitioners, people just like us, people who are us. We are a sangha. And that reminds me, points out this guiding constellation in the night sky that gives me faith because of experience. I know this leads in a direction that's healing. So our practice is never static because our experience isn't static. No matter how many times I get off track, no matter how many times I forget where I'm going or get distracted by old conditioning, I can always return to these intentions. I can always return to these supports of Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. And remembering that teaching of the Buddha, that what we incline the mind toward becomes the inclination of the mind. And the inclination of the mind becomes how we are in the world. It's never all or nothing. It's this slight pivot again and again and again, and persistence in remembering and choosing to make that pivot. Persistence in looking and inclining instead of grasping at capital G goals. Can I think more in terms of inclining, a tendency, a movement toward? And can I appreciate when I see that my actions align with that inclination? And can I forgive myself when they don't? So we can't force ourselves. We can only incline and appreciate, reinforce and delight, and appreciate the coming back again and again. So my favorite poem that I I probably have offered about 100 times at ICD, but it's only 4 lines, so indulge me. It's by the poet Kabir. Slowly, slowly, O mind, everything in its own pace happens. Gardener may water 100 buckets, fruit arrives only in its season. So, just to close, remembering the Dalai Lama saying, my religion is simple, my religion is kindness. So for me right now, the practice is 2 things: relating to the moment with kind presence, and to look for that 1 degree, that slight inclination toward wholeness, toward compassion, to ask myself, what is possible in this moment? Not getting trapped in the vines of past conditioning and behaviors that I may have outgrown the need for. What no longer serves? That's the question. What am I ready to release? And what beautiful qualities do I want to remember, to call upon, to deepen? Letting go is the engine of liberation, and it's a gentle process. letting go, we may need to let go again and again and again. And then at some point we notice, oh yeah, I haven't thought of that in weeks or months or years. I guess I really let that go. So to close the reflection, I just want to offer from Ajahn Chah, a Thai monk who taught many of the leaders of the Western Insight tradition, invites us this way: do everything with a mind that lets go. Don't accept praise or gain or anything else. If you let go a little, you will have a little peace. If you let go a lot, you will have a lot of peace. If you let go completely, you will have complete peace. Okay, so let's just sit for a moment and let the words settle. And maybe just even asking yourself, what am I ready to let go of? What is it possible to drop, to allow to fall away? What is ripe? What is ready to fall away? What no longer serves? And maybe something comes to mind and maybe not. And if nothing in particular comes to mind, just allowing that question, what am I ready to let go of? Just allowing that to drop into you. And maybe the answer will become clear later on. Maybe you'll just know, yeah, I'm ready to let that go now. And sometimes when we consider this question, self-judgment can arise, like, oh, I should have let go of that a long time ago, or I don't think I can do it. And offering compassion to ourselves, letting go isn't always easy. May I allow myself to be a student of life, still learning. May I trust my process. May I let go when the time is right. part of our practice is checking in with ourselves. What's going on? How am I really? How am I now? And not only what am I ready to let go of, but what do I celebrate in myself? What do I appreciate in myself? So I want to open the floor for any questions or thoughts or anything that you might like to share or just give voice to. Um, if you'd like, just unmute yourself or raise your hand and we can do that for you. So we're at time, and I wanted to close with a poem. And thank you all so much for being here. I really appreciate it. Yeah, just so helpful to practice tonight. And this poem is by Derek Walcott, who was a poet from the West Indies. And this poem is called Love After Love. And I think he was the poet laureate of, I want to say Trinidad and Tobago, but I'm not sure. Maybe somebody knows and can put it in chat. But this is called Love After Love. The time will come when, with elation, you will greet yourself arriving at your own door, in your own mirror, and each will smile at the other's welcome and say, "Sit here, eat." You will love again the stranger who was yourself. Give wine, give bread, give back your heart to itself, to the stranger who has loved you all your life, whom you ignored for another, who knows you by heart. Take down the love letters from the bookshelf, the photographs, the desperate notes. Peel your own image from the mirror. Sit, feast on your life. So, many blessings on your week ahead and the whole year ahead, of course, and hope to practice again very soon. Take care.